You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. Do I have a treat for you today in terms of guests? Maya Raghu is an attorney focusing on violence in the workplace. And Rebecca Rachmany is the founder and leader of an organization that produces comics and cartoons about little girls being experts and explorers in science and technology, great for kids of both sexes. And Sima Samar, the great human rights defender, is here with actual heartening news about human rights, especially those for women, from, of all places, Afghanistan. But first we need to go inside the headlines. So the Pope has come and gone, to choruses of praise from conservative and liberal Americans both. The standard for progressive popiness is so low that calling for attention to the poor, noticing that humans are destroying the planet, and riding in a Fiat seems to be a combination that makes everyone swoon. I do sympathize with what riding in a Fiat costs anyone who has sciatica, but still. But I couldn't help noticing some aspects of his visit, and you suspected I might share them with you, so here goes. Toward the end of his stay in Philadelphia, Francis urged Americans to live up to the values and principles on which this country was founded. Indeed, good idea. So let's start there. The framers of our Constitution, in particular Jefferson and Madison, would have had apoplexy that the head of any religious body, much less a large and powerful one with its own political agenda, would be addressing a joint session of the U.S. Congress. That is a rank violation of the wall between church and state articulated by Jefferson himself. And of course Madison said there should be no chaplains ever in the Congress, not even chaplains. We have been sliding toward the erosion of that wall separating church and state so steadily and deplorably in this country that no major anchor, reporter, or commentator uttered a peep about this. However, there were some heartening or at least amusing moments in the address to Congress. Some gutsy soul must have put her or his protocol foot down and insisted that Francis could not be introduced as the standard His Holiness the Pope, and there must have been hours of meetings to wrestle that one line into a compromise. So they wound up with him being announced to the chamber as, quote, the Pope of the Holy See, close quote. They snuck in holy, but since most people don't know what in hell the C stands for, it actually stands for state, which the Vatican hasn't been for centuries. Anyway, the C mattered less, and the holy mattered less since you don't know what it was the adjective to. Also heartening was that the 4 members attending from the Supreme Court, 3 Catholics plus the intrepid Ruth Ginsburg, stood as he entered along with everybody else, and as he left along with everybody else, but did not stand unlike the rest of the audience, to any statement during his speech. I also confess I enjoyed his surprise pivot after raising the issue of the importance of, quote, life, that pivot going not to abortion, but to ending the death penalty. Refreshing. Nonetheless, he got in the words life in all its stages, and also the dog whistle signal word about same-sex relationships, quote, lifestyle, close quote. Look, I know that much of the Latino community is ecstatic, not only identifying with this particular Latino pope, but over his principled support for humane immigration laws. But principle is not the whole truth. Being a smart man, Francis knows that the future of the church, particularly in the Americas, depends totally on such communities. In Europe, and especially North America, the Roman Catholic Church is dying for lack of communicants, clergy, and parishioners. Immigrant communities are, at least will be for a while, the solution. As for his choice to canonize a priest who evangelized Christianity to indigenous peoples, violating their own faith systems and collaborating in cultural genocide. Well, at first I was actually touched for a second by reports that he was going to meet directly after the canonization ceremony with indigenous groups, ostensibly to hear their side of the story and apologize, although, after the fact. Then I learned that Francis was meeting not with the majority of indigenous groups who were protesting this canonization, but with a handful of indigenous individuals who were actually grateful for having been brought Christianity. By the way, I learned this from Chris Cuomo and Christiane Amanpour at CNN, who alone among the commentators and anchors seemed willing to report such ironies, while not in a state of personal, perpetual gaga adoration, a state of being in which Chris Matthews of MSNBC seems to have taken up permanent residence. The papal UN speech showed what a clever policy wonk Francis is, especially to a body in which the Vatican should not be represented as a member state. The interdenominational ceremony at Ground Zero in New York, although at least it had the presence of some women clergy from, of course, non-Catholic denominations and religions, sent me back to my default position of deep suspicion of, if not frank opposition to, all organized religions. Which reminds me that Jake Tapper, again, of CNN, kept interrupting the journalistic glaze worshipfully reporting on Francis. Jake Tapper alone kept reminding his viewers that 22% of Americans now described ourselves as atheist, agnostic, or having, quote, no religion, close quote. Further, Francis is harping on religious freedom, which is in itself a worthy concept, to be sure. It was another code dog whistle to those who would deny women insurance coverage for contraception, to those who hate and would destroy Planned Parenthood, and to those who claim that granting a marriage license or baking a wedding cake for same-sex lovers violates their religious freedom. And speaking of women, all that stuff about honoring the women religious and women as mothers is old Pope pap. But this time, even the radical nuns on the bus swooned starry-eyed. It shows how pathetically grateful people are, even for crumbs. It should be noted, though, that the only group of nuns Francis actually met with were the so-called Little Sisters of the Poor, what a name, who brought the lawsuit against Obamacare, permitting contraceptive coverage. Now, if some of you were basking in the afterglow of Pope Francis, and I've rained on your afterglow, well, sorry about that. Look, I didn't even go into the unsettling weirdness of his kissing and embracing children all over the place, and everyone cooing over that, without mentioning priestly sexual abuse in this country. In fact, on the contrary, he praised the bishops for having suffered through that difficult period and having moved swiftly and decisively against the abuse, when in fact they did neither. Listen, the guy is the Pope of the Roman Catholic Church, folks. But what's important to remember is the secret history of that church about contraception and abortion, which I've mentioned before on this show, but which bears repeating and provides excellent tools for arguing. So stay tuned for that in Fighting Words at the end of this program. For now, in sum, yes, Francis is definitely an improvement as popes go, but I wish they would. And now it's time for my first guest. Maya Raghu, that's R-A-G-H-U, is a member of the American Bar Association Commission on Domestic and Sexual Violence, and she is a senior attorney with Futures Without Violence, and with their initiative, Workplaces Respond to Domestic and Sexual Violence. In other words, violence in the workplace, indeed. Maya Raghu. Maya, welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's good to have you here. You do work that is so desperately needed, right at the intersection of the workplace and gender. And Futures Without Violence has been around as an NGO for like 3 decades or so, but it seems to have blossomed again, renewed itself lately. Tell our listeners about Futures Without Violence.
Sure. Futures Without Violence originally began over 30 years ago as the Family Violence Prevention Fund in San Francisco, and that's where we're still headquartered. And during those 30 years, we've moved from individually assisting survivors in dealing with the criminal justice system, healthcare system, and supporting their needs to really moving further out. We began to see that although it's critically important to address the needs of individual women and individual survivors of violence, there were much bigger sort of systemic changes and problems within institutions and systems and at a policy level. So that's where our work started moving over the years. We are really an organization focused on transforming and changing social norms around gender and gender-based violence. So we do that through programmatic work, through policy and legislative advocacy, public education campaigns, and leadership training. And we're really interested in empowering individuals to not only respond, but prevent and end violence against women and children here in the U.S. and around the world.
Yes, please. You were Futures was a driving force behind the Violence Against Women Act passage in 1994, wasn't it?
Yes, that's correct. We were absolutely part of a coalition of wonderful organizations across the country that worked to come up with and advocate for and pass the first Federal Violence Against Women Act in 1994 and the subsequent sort of reauthorizations about every 4 or 5 years since then. And with every reauthorization, again, we have led groups around the country in a coalition to really not only hold firm on making sure there's continued funding for critically needed services for survivors and communities across the country, but to expand access to the supports available to them and assistance through legislative change as well.
This is quite a mandate, a woman-date, a span all the way from affecting policy, which is vital, to working with individual doctors and nurses and judges and athletic coaches, to change attitudes to bullying, to violence, to abuse, isn't it? I mean, it's quite a span.
Absolutely. They have access to young people. They are the ones that are helping to define the norms of masculinity.
That's right. This is the first organization I think I've ever heard of or encountered that specifies that you work with athletic coaches and trying to affect the sports ethos. I'm sure that there are groups, but in my trolling about, and there's quite a few groups that I encounter. I think this is the first that I've seen that has that front and center. So bravo. You've expanded now, and you're doing a lot of stuff with low-income and migrant workers, aren't you? Those are the new programs?
Right. So for the last 10 to 15 years, we have moved into focusing on the workplace as an important institution or system that interacts with survivors of violence and perpetrators, too. They employ them, whether or not you know it. So for several years, we have been working to provide information, training, resources to, private businesses, public businesses, including government agencies and entities, to labor unions, worker organizations, and domestic and sexual violence service providers to make them aware of the ways that domestic and sexual violence can impact the workplace, whether it's in terms of safety, financial issues, the human cost when you have employees who are killed at work or sexually assaulted at work, how to address them, and not just sort of respond to them or react to them in a knee-jerk way, but to really think proactively about how would we act in this situation? How do we create an environment where people know they can speak up and seek support without a fear of being fired? And that goes a long way to preventing violence as well. We have a new initiative that is focused specifically on people who are working in minimum wage jobs in several sectors, which also employ large numbers of immigrant workers who are particularly vulnerable to a lot of exploitation in the workplace, including domestic and sexual violence for a lot of different reasons.
Yes, yes. And I know that Futures Without Violence has also done and is doing work on parental leave, which is has come up a number of times on this program because maternal leave doesn't cut it. We know that works against women. And even lately, there was a piece in the New York Times recently, I'm sure you must have seen it, on parental leave even so being used to discriminate against women in the workplace. At least it's better if it's called parental leave, because when it's called primary caregiver, it still devolves on the women, and sooner or later it gets taken out of her hide.
That's absolutely right. And this goes back to, I think, one of the bigger goals of our workplace project and our organization in general. Again, changing social norms in the workplace. Our workplaces are still primarily set up, in this paradigm of the 1950s or 60s, where you have one person, primarily the man,
Yep.
Working full-time with presumed to have a spouse at home full-time who doesn't work, who takes care of the children in the house, which we know is not the reality at all. Over half the families in this country are single-parent families supporting children, working these minimum wage and service jobs, and they don't have access to a lot of things like parental leave, paid sick leave.
Right.
So if you have a child who's sick or you're a victim of domestic violence and you need to take time off from work to go to the doctor or see the police, you're making hard choices between staying safe or keeping your job.
Yeah.
So we are certainly doing work in this area and working to pass legislation in this area and encouraging companies to, pass their own policies to provide paid leave, whether or not they're required to by law, because it is so essential to helping working families, which includes survivors of domestic and sexual violence.
Right, and it also helps the workplace and the company, which they don't seem to always understand.
Right. Well, another big part of that is morale. People like to feel trusted and valued, and if they don't have to worry that they're going to lose their job because their kid needs to go to the doctor, that's a huge burden that's lifted, and they're much more likely to feel loyalty towards their employer and be willing to go the extra mile. I mean, we understand that employers have a lot of concerns about people abusing those sort of benefits and privileges, but the reality is most people don't have them, and they would be so grateful to have them.
Of course.
That, they don't want to jeopardize their employment with supporting their families.
Well, the worry about, this will be abused, slippery slope arguments for something that ought to be a basic human right always makes me crazy.
Right? The fact that we're probably the only major industrialized country that doesn't have any sort of paid parental leave.
Embarrassing. At the very minimum, embarrassing. Give the website of Futures Without Violence so people can follow up and learn more.
Absolutely. You can find us at www.futureswithoutviolence.org. We're also on Facebook. We're on Twitter at Without Violence. We're on Instagram. So you can find us all over social media.
Oh, that's terrific. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Robin.
It's time for a short break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. And when we return, you will get to learn who Purple and Nine are. They are two little girls, and they are comic strip characters, and they are into science and technology. They are every feminist parent's dream for their kids.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back. My next guest is Rebecca Rachmany, Rachmany. She is the founder and CEO of a company called Gangly Sister, Gangly Sister, Gangly Sister, that is creating an ecosystem of video, apps, and community for little girls to learn about how tech solves real-world problems and then create and share their own ideas. It's a terrific notion. Here is Rebecca Rachmany. Rebecca Rachmany, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you and Gangly Sister, that's Gangly, Gangly Sister, are quite a pair. You're the founder and the CEO of this company that is literally transforming how girls are perceived in the media. I had not known, among so much of the bad news about the presence of women in media and the numbers that the Women's Media Center releases every year with an updated status report, I didn't know in terms of children's programming that fewer than 25% of the characters are female. That's outrageous. That's
just the characters.
Yeah.
That's not even the protagonist. That's all over.
Yeah, I mean, my teeth begin grinding uncontrollably. But you're doing something about it. So tell us about Gangly Sisters, and tell us about the new animated series and the comic book and all these great things.
Yeah, so we actually started backwards. I didn't start as a media company. I'm a technology person. I come from the world of tech. And I studied in the 80s, where if you look at the statistics, that's when there were the most math and computer science majors among women, and it's gone down from there. And I actually never experienced the kind of comments that we're seeing are so common today, and the kind of subliminal, putting down of women when I was studying mathematics. And one day I was just sitting and I was saying, what happened? I thought this was solved in the 80s.
Yeah.
And where are the women? And many women are studying these things, but they're not ending up being the founders. Even in places where you see a lot of women in computer science, you don't see them as founders. You see them as maybe they get up to be programmers or to a certain level.
Right.
And fundamentally, no matter what your obstacles are, and I'm sure you know that, you get to where you want to go. If you set your goals and you say, I'm going to work hard and I'm going to get there. So we said it's not necessarily that there's this gender inequality because it's not an even playing field. It isn't, but it's bigger than that.
Yep.
It starts with not setting your goals when you're young, that this is what I want to be when I grow up.
Right.
Yeah, that's exactly what we said. We said we're going to solve the problem of not enough women in STEM with comics, which sounds a little unconventional, but we felt that if girls are looking at themselves from a different perspective, if boys also are looking at girls from a different perspective,
yes,
we can eliminate this problem right at the root when people are forming their ideas about what it means to be a girl, what it means to be a woman, and what it means to be a technologist. We're not really doing anybody any favors by showing on TV that these people in technologies are geeks, they all wear glasses, they're
right,
socially challenged.
These two little girl characters, Purple and Nine, I love them. I love them. Purple and Nine are not, geeks. They're multidimensional. They're not idealized goody-goody girls. They're also not mean girls. They're not sports girls or geek girls or any of the little, categories. They're full-rounded, short human beings, and they use apps, and they use a 3D printer, and they invent new things to solve their problems. They're just wonderful. Talk about the comics and about the animated series.
Yeah. So, we came up with Purple and Nine with exactly that in mind. We wanted well-rounded characters. So Purple, she's very interested in robotics, but she also skateboards, and she also, she's part of a family with two brothers and a sister, and she's kind of trying to fit in and be perfect and be what her parents want her to be. And she has all these hobbies, whereas Nine she's out to save the world. And a lot of kids these days are. Yeah,
of course they are.
Really interested in how do we save the animals and the environment. I mean, they realize, right, we're going to grow up, we need an environment. Right. And how do we help other kids in the rest of the world? In every episode and in every one of the comic book series, they help someone in their classroom with technology, and they help someone overseas in the third world with technology, so that it allows kids to see that it's not about liking science or being a geek. It's about, hey, if I really want to make a change in the world, technology and science are really great professions for me, because that's how I can impact a lot of people.
Yes.
And I think when I hear people say, well, the reason girls aren't doctors or scientists or whatever is they want to help people. And I think that's just crazy.
Yes.
Technology is what solved hunger, and that's what Purple and Nine do. So they get in a lot of trouble. Although Purple tries to really keep in line. Nine is very adventurous, and she's just like, we have to solve a problem, and she doesn't know the meaning of failure.
Aww.
She just thinks, if you tried something and it didn't work, you try the next thing.
I just love them both. And say how people can get a hold of these, the videos and the website and the process of getting a hold of they're downloadable, the animated film. Well, you take it from there. Yeah.
So purpleand9.com. So purple and nine all written out. .com. That's where you can find Purple and Nine. The video is there. It's also on YouTube, and we have the comics are going to be officially released at October 10th. October 15th. We're going to have the comics. They're going to be a series of 3 officially released. But if you sign up for our newsletter at the purpleand9.com site, we already have a pre-release of the first comic book. It's called The Adventures of Pajama Boy. So if you sign up for the newsletter, we'll tell you about that pre-release, which is, we haven't made the official release, but the official release will be on October 15th, and that'll be all 3 of the first series of comic books. And they're standard 20-page digital comics, 22-page digital comics. You can read them on any reader, smartphone. We're not printing them right now because kids today, everybody's got a Kindle, everybody's got a smartphone, so...
Right.
We don't see any need to mash up trees in order to read books anymore.
Right.
So
this is fantastic. I mean, and do we hope to eventually for this to also be on television? Do we hope to go cross media, or are we focusing primarily on digital?
Well, absolutely. We plan to be as big as Frozen. There's no reason why not. It's the same target audience, girls 8 to 12.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. And we're completely bootstrapped. This is self-funded. So depending on how many comics we sell, we're planning on going for the comics we want to have every 2 weeks. And then the next stage will be apps, because that's really where girls start use their phones all the time. And there'll be apps that actually have kids build something and not just imagine themselves as an inventor, but become an inventor.
Oh, this is
so
brilliant.
That's the next step. Yeah, that's the next step. And then after that, it'll be video and everything.
Oh, after that, the world. The sun will never set on Gangly Sister. So the Gangly Sister website is ganglysister.org?
ganglysister.com.
.com, sorry. And
we're a company. And purpleand9.com is where you can find about the comic specifically.
And that's the word and the word 9, not no ampersand and no numeral. Purpleand9.com. You are wonderful. This is a wonderful initiative, but this is going to make a huge difference. In fact, a recent study coming out of California by women in Silicon Valley has shown that when, in fact, you talk about the good. The saving the world, precisely that, the saving the world aspects of engineering. Women, in fact, flock into engineering. It's when it's all about nuts and bolts and boys and their toys that women turn off. So you're getting women at the mini stage, and this can just be an enormous contribution. Thank you so much, Rebecca, and everybody that you work with for this extraordinary stuff that you're turning out. And we all can't wait to see Purple and Nine. And thank you for being with us on Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great. And I just love the work you're doing as well.
And now it's time for the Surrealism Corner. Of the many contenders for the Surrealism Corner this past week or so, one stands out in my mind. 2 events, actually, in competition for the same television audience the same night, and I wouldn't want to bet which one won. The one that probably won was for the Pope. It was in Philadelphia, called the Festival of Families, organized by the Vatican, and although it had Aretha, Wake My Heart, and some performers, the stars were Catholic families from around the world talking about how persecuted they were as Christians. They all went away presumably happy with blessed rosaries. And CNN, about whom I now withdraw my unequivocal praise from earlier, covered that wall to wall. No other show, no other interruptions. The other event was the Global Citizens Evening in New York Central Park with Stephen Colbert, Beyoncé, and Bill Gates. Well, nobody's perfect, the Bill Gates part. And it had a stated goal to end extreme poverty in the world. What a difference between the two events. How surreal that they were in competition with each other. Time for another break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and in just a minute I'll be back with a guest who is not only a great friend, but a towering figure in human rights, and she actually has, brace yourself, good news about women in Afghanistan.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back again. My next guest is a distinguished, towering global human rights figure who has repeatedly been nominated for the Nobel Prize. Dr. Sima Samar is Afghan. In fact, she's a Hazara, one of the more persecuted minorities in Afghanistan. She received her medical degree in 1982. During her years in exile in Pakistan, she became a leader for educating Afghan women and girls. She founded the Shuhada organization, which now operates over 50 schools for girls and boys in Afghanistan and schools for Afghan refugees in Quetta, Pakistan. And during the Taliban regime, she and the organization operated underground homeschool classes for girls in Afghanistan. She was Minister for Women's Affairs from 2001 to 2003, and she currently is the founder and chair of the first independent Afghanistan Human Rights Commission ever to exist. Here is my beloved friend, Dr. Sima Samar. Dr. Sima Samar, Sima, my friend for short, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, and good morning. It's a pleasure to hear your voice and to be with you.
I'm so glad that you made time to do this interview. There's so much to ask you. Let's start with right now. You are the convener and the chair of the Afghan Independent Human Rights Commission, and which means that you oversee the conduct of human rights education programs across Afghanistan and the implementation of a nationwide women's rights education program following up from when you were Minister of Women. How is that going? We're not getting much news, or the news that we get out of Afghanistan seems to be mostly about what the U.S. is doing wrong again, repeating old mistakes. So bring us up to speed on the real stuff that's happening.
Yes, I think in the last 14 years after the fall of Taliban regime, we have really achieved a lot. To begin from the Constitution, for first time in our history, the Constitution recognized the equal rights for men and women. And also, for first time in our history, that act of domestic violence is criminalized, and we have a law on elimination of violence against women.
Uh-huh.
We should not forget that in 2003, Afghanistan ratified CEDAW without any reservation.
Wow, I didn't realize that last part.
Yes. The government, the state actually ratified CEDAW without reservation, and we're using CEDAW as a tool in order to change the legislation and law and make women's rights friendly, and to, of course, to promote equality of men and women in Afghanistan. And we also ratified the Convention on Elimination of the People with Disability. As you know, that we have a lot of people with disability.
Yes, I do.
Due to war and due to actually natural disasters and so on. And Afghanistan ratified that and trying to implement. And it's first time in our history that we ratify some of the conventions of human rights, like Child Rights Convention and also Convention Against Torture. These are the Convention on Socio-Economic and Cultural Rights. All of them ratified before most of them ratified before the current regime that we have. But for first time, we are reporting on that.
Mm-hmm. Ah.
We had a 2 round of UPR report, and these days we are preparing for the report on CAT, Convention Against Torture, and we are pushing the Commission. I am and my colleague, we are pushing the Afghan government to also ratify the optional protocol on torture.
Mm.
You know how important these are. And we, as the Human Rights Commission, we are really trying to implement the convention, which is ratified, and it told the government that they have an obligation to implement and to make these nice words and sentences on those conventions real for the people in the country.
Mm. Well, in that respect, Afghanistan is no different from most countries that spend a lot of lip service and then and sign the conventions and then do very little or nothing.
No, I have to say that Afghanistan, with all the problem that still continues in Afghanistan, the war every day, the killing, the rape, the abduction of the people, but we are doing much, much better on these issues of human rights than our neighboring countries, including Pakistan, Iran,
yes.
So any Central Asian, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan. First of all, they don't have a National Commission for Human Rights. Pakistan just established it 2 months ago, and it's still in a very, very initial stage. So we are doing quite good on human rights. Unfortunately, these issues of improvement in Afghanistan is not seen much. So always the media report the suicide attack, the beheading, the killing of people, men and women. There's no doubt those are still existing.
Yes, yes. It's so important to get the word out that something good is happening, because if you're working your life away to make that happen and it gets completely disappeared, it's very dispiriting, and the work that you do. You're one of those extremely rare people who can function at the highest UN levels and also in the villages at the grassroots. So you bridge an enormous gap, and are the voice of a real constituency. Are the women really hopeful at a village level for education? Because all we're hearing is that education is stopped a lot through fear.
Well, there is a lot of impact by Taliban on burning the school and closing the school and threatening the school. But if you go in most parts of the country, the girls are really walking for 2 hours in order to reach the school.
Oh.
And this is something. Sometimes they do have a proper shoes, and sometimes they even do not have a proper shoes. Some of those plastic chapels, which partially is not existing or destroyed, but they're walking and running in order to go to school. But the question remains the quality of education. The quality of education, it requires a long time, but honestly, it was not focused enough on to improve the quality of education because of the different issues, including corruption, and because of the country needs a lot of reform. So it was not only education. We didn't have our national forces, no police, no army, no intelligence service. It was different groups acting like that.
Yes.
But compared to all these, I think there's a lot of improvement. Of course, what we need for the reconstruction of country, a better quality of education and its basic human rights. And the other issue that human rights, when it was counted as a crime during Taliban, if the people were using the word human rights, they were punished. Currently, turned to be a discourse in every family, even in very, very remote part of the country. They heard of it, either by radio or by television or by any other possible means in the country. And this is, for me, doing this work for 14 years, the Human Rights Commission, is really a big achievement.
It's huge. It's absolutely incalculably enormous, because it's the first Human Rights Commission in the country's history, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And if the concept of human rights is a wonderfully dangerous, subversive concept, dangerous to tyranny, in other words. I mean, so that once I believe that once people develop a taste for it, know that even the concept exists, that there is something in the human spirit that rises to it, and it may take a very long time for it to become operational, but once it is there is no stopping it.
Absolutely. I mean, can you imagine that the people are calling 12 at midnight or 1 in the morning if somebody happened in the village? This was not existing before. There was one woman who was killed, unfortunately, and they wanted to throw her body to the river. There's a river between Afghanistan and Pakistan, so the body could go and be disappeared. Yeah. And they could easily say that she committed suicide. And her neighbor, an uneducated lady, called our office, said that be careful, because she said every time they tried to do, and I was trying to show some light. Of course, the villages doesn't have electricity. Yeah. Showing some light in order to tell them that somebody is watching. Until she called our staff, and our staff called the chief of police of that province. And it was the mother-in-law, unfortunately, with her son. Yeah. And both were arrested. And this is something, I mean, in a corner of Afghanistan, in Kunar, it's a very remote part. It's full of conflict. And she's calling in the middle of the night and saying that, oh, there's something going wrong. I think they killed their daughter-in-law, and now they're trying to throw the body in the river.
So from the one of the most remote parts of the country, somebody already knew where to call. I mean, to me, this is the hope for the country. And in fact, globally, women, I believe, are the hope for the planet. But what do you see happening with this new administration in Afghanistan? And do you see that the U.S. is still doing the same thing again and again without learning, or do you see any improvement on that front?
Well, the new administration, of course, we have Dr. Ghani as the president and Dr. Abdullah as chief executive director.
Yes.
They are trying, actually, to do and save the country. But I think what is really needed, because for a while they were really focused on talking with Pakistan and work on the peace, which is really needed. But it doesn't mean that we should forget about the actual responsibility, which is good governance in the country.
Yes.
I think if we promote good governance, rule of law, and human rights, and provide the basic social services to the people will be in our side. And the Taliban naturally will be excluded.
Yeah.
But again, I would say that for me, I believe that the government should do much more homework and clean the house. And then once you clean the house, the people trust you. There's no space, there's no reason for Taliban to be accepted by the community.
Yes, it would seem.
And that means they have to stop the culture of impunity and everything. They have to deal with more on rule of law and fight with corruption.
It's encouraging news that you bring, though. It doesn't get out here, and I don't think it does get out to the rest of the world. What you are doing with human rights, what is happening with women on the ground, and even though it's still a very hard row to hoe, it does sound like there is a shift, and it's thanks to amazing women like you. We've got to go, but thank you. Oh, thank you, dear Sima. Be careful. Take care of yourself. You're a global resource for women.
Thank you very much. And it's always a pleasure. And I'm so happy. I get inspired when I see friends like you. And I think the final sentence that I would like to mention is that I hope your government, United States government, learn the lesson and they do not repeat the mistakes that they repeat in Afghanistan and the rest of the world. So I'm so happy and grateful to you and to your commitment and courage, and of course with a lot of respect and love.
Yes, my dear. Take care. We're working on our government. Believe me, we're working on it. Take care.
Yeah, interestingly, they are not funding the Human Rights Commission in Afghanistan. Do you believe that?
No, I didn't know that. Well, that's a very tangible target then to work on.
Yes.
That's incredible. They're sending more arms, but they're not funding the Human Rights Commission. Okay, that goes to the top of the to-do list, Sima.
Yes.
We have to take one last quick break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and Robin Morgan will be right back with some fighting words.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
And we're back again, this time with fighting words. The position of the Protestant religious right is based primarily on that of the Roman Catholic Church regarding abortion, since the Bible does not forbid the procedure. Furthermore, while there are a few subtle differences among the opposition, a couple of groups may permit some contraceptive use, a growing number would silence even information about contraception, much less making it available. All of them claim that their religious convictions alone serve the state's interest and that any interference with their religious convictions violates their religious freedom. So it's relevant to address this subject and to replace the untruths and half-truths and flat outright lies with facts. For example, there is no mention of abortion as a crime or as a woman's right in the United States Constitution. This is because A, there's no mention of women in the Constitution, and B, abortion was both legal and practiced at the time. Now, there is also no mention of abortion in the Bible. There are as many as 600 Mosaic laws, but not one of them comments on abortion. Jewish law traditionally considers that life begins at birth. Exodus refers to miscarriage due to a woman being hurt accidentally as men fight, adding that the culprit should be fined, but if the woman, not the fetus, dies, he should be killed. In general, the Bible is not particularly child-friendly. Murdering the firstborn of every Egyptian household, that's Exodus. Ordering that infants of adversaries should be dashed to pieces, that's Hosea. Ripped up, that's Kings 2. Slain, that's 1 Samuel. And eaten, that's in Deuteronomy 28.53. And so forth. Psalm 137 proclaims, "Happy shall he be that taketh and dasheth thy little ones against the stones." Not so good for small, short people. Now, the history of the Roman Catholic Church's position, from which current U.S. anti-choice extremist Christian positions all derive, is not what you'd think. Today's Vatican finds even the words reproductive health unacceptable in official UN documents, in case anyone might construe them to include the already deleted word abortion. And it lobbies effectively in coalition with Islamists and Protestant fundamentalists, none of whom are member states per se as religions, although the Vatican is a member state of the UN, lobbies with this unholy trinity to purge all UN documents of precisely such language. But the Catholic Church's opposition to abortion was not always so absolute. It was only in 1869 that abortion at any stage was made subject to automatic excommunication. This had to do with the Church's position on sexuality, not on respect for fetal life. The Church pretends that its position on abortion has been based on a right to life and remained unchanged for 2,000 years, when in fact their position has varied continuously over the course of history, with no unanimous opinion on the subject at any one given time. In 400 CE, Christian era, Augustine expressed the then mainstream view that early abortion required penance only for the sexual aspects of the sin, not as homicide. Now, Augustine really had a thing about sex. He made celibacy an ideal, and he argued that the only justification for sex was to conceive a child. The 1968 encyclical Humanae Vitae, condemning artificial contraception, is pure Augustinian. And Augustine's theories and his theology has dominated the Church for at least a millennium and a half. He didn't care about the abortion part. He cared about sex, and he cared about sex if you had to stoop to having it. It was only for conception. So that's where contraception went out the window. Anyway, so that was Augustine in 400 CE, and about 800 years later, Thomas Aquinas substantially agreed. Between 1198 and 1216, Pope Innocent III ruled abortion as being not irregular if the fetus was not vivified or animated. Animation was considered 80 days for a female and 40 days for a male. They thought girls took longer. Though it wasn't explained how anyone could tell the difference in the womb. You know, amniocentesis wasn't around in 1216. Pope Sixtus V forbade all abortions in 1588, but in 1591, Pope Gregory XIV rescinded that order, reestablishing permission to abort up to 40 days for both a male or female fetus. Then Antoninus, who got sainted, he was Archbishop of Florence, a 15th century Dominican. He wrote a major treatise on abortion, teaching that early abortion to save a woman's life was moral. Thomas Sanchez, a 17th century Jesuit, just like the current Pope was a Jesuit, noted that all his Catholic theologian contemporaries justified abortion to save the life of the woman. It was only in 1869 that Pius IX ruled all abortion murder and defined it as an excommunicable sin. Now, some scholars argue that this edict was issued under pressure from Napoleon III, who was concerned that the birth rate had been dropping and that France might face a serious depletion of soldiers for its wars and colonizations. Furthermore, and also contrary to popular belief, the prohibition of abortion is not covered or governed by claims of papal infallibility, which leaves far more room for discussion than is usually assumed. There's another aspect, too. The Holy See has this interesting rule. Well, actually, it's in the canon law. It's called sensus fidelium. This is a mechanism that already exists for the Church to change its prohibition on birth control in a theologically sound and face-saving manner. Sensus fidelium, which means the sense of the faithful, holds that a widespread agreement among the clergy and the faithful on an issue indicates truth. So, what happened then, back in 1964, when Pope Paul VI convened a commission on the issue? He actually did, as I mentioned in a previous broadcast, and a majority of members, including 60 of 64 theologians and 9 of 15 cardinals, recommended lifting the ban against contraception. We already know that approximately 70% of all Catholics worldwide would be very happy to have that ban lifted, and the planet would be happy to have less people on it. Instead, Pope Paul VI issued an encyclical confirming that it would stay firmly in place, and Pope Francis praised Pope Paul's decision and has done so repeatedly. So there you go. These facts and figures are all in Fighting Words, a toolkit for combating the religious right, the little book that I assembled as precisely that, and it's in e-format and in print. You can find it on Amazon and anywhere else. Fighting Words, this segment of the program is named for that little book. I wish you well with using it as a tool for arguing. May that tool sing in your hands. And that's it for today. This program is syndicated, but if you can't find the broadcast on a radio station in your area, you can always visit us at WMClive.com. There you can find the show, plus the archive of all our previous episodes. And we're at iTunes worldwide. There you can stream, download, and subscribe to the show's podcast. Also, be sure to find WMC Live on Facebook and Twitter. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Opinions expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. Regina K. Scully is our founding sponsor. Julie Burton, Women's Media Center President, is executive producer. And I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us. Don't forget to join us next week right here on Women's Media Center Live.
For the smartest talk about news, politics, sex, books, religion, race, and more, tune your radio to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacious, witty, provocative, informative, and fun. It's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on WMCLive.com. Talk radio with a brain.